Hello there, everyone, and welcome to another jam-packed episode of Geeks Who Like Sports. As always, I am Ray Carcillo, joined by my best buddy Lee Elias over in Philadelphia. Lee, how is it going this morning?
Ray, it's a dreary day outside. I just spent the last week in Las Vegas, and I came back to Philadelphia where it's raining and miserable. And for my mug today, I don't even have a special mug, but I did that on purpose because today's entire episode is about disappointment.
Yes, that's right. One of the main things we're talking about today, folks, is disappointment. Also, quick heads up: do not adjust your speakers. My voice is a little hoarse today. I blew out my voice earlier in the week. I'm back to about 80% strength in my voice, but that would not deter me from another episode of Geeks Who Like Sports.
No, and it will not deter me from using my beautiful radio voice today, which for some reason sounds magnificent.
Yes, you sound fantastic. Vegas did you good, my friend. Vegas did you good.
We'll talk about it later in the show.
Yeah. All right, so yes, we're talking about disappointment. We're talking about Swamp Thing. We're talking about Superman Year One. We're talking about the X-Men movies. Then later on, we're talking about the idea of the Tampa Bay Rays splitting time between Tampa and Montreal somehow in baseball. And then we will, of course, do our mashup, which will be if Tampa Bay can split time between two cities, could a superhero split time between two brands? So we will get to that later on. But for now, we are talking about disappointment. Lee, you have seen the X-Men Phoenix movie. I have not because I refuse to. Lee, why does that movie make you so disappointed? Tell us about it, my friend.
So let's start with that, and keeping in mind, too, that when we get to Superman Year One and Swamp Thing, I have not seen those. So Ray and I are going to be trading, for the first time, information about each other's viewing experiences with these properties. That's what I'll put it that way. But, yeah, let's talk about Dark Phoenix. So I went to go see it, and I'll be honest with you, Ray, the reason I went to go see it is because this was almost kind of my swan song with the X-Men universe. X-Men, which started the modern comic book movie, a milestone that it will always have. And I kind of wanted to do this out of respect for the franchise, if you will. For those of you who don't know, X-Men has always been my favorite comic book franchise forever, since elementary school. I've been a huge fan. My son's name is Logan. I'm not going to go into how he got that name, but if you're listening to the show, you probably just figured it out. So X-Men's always had a dear place in my heart. I'm very excited they're going to be going to the MCU. So I went to go see Dark Phoenix. And it's a tough thing to explain. It is not a movie I'm recommending that anybody go see in the theater. I'll put it there right away. It is absolutely something you should watch on TV. It's not to the point it's unwatchable. Nothing will ever be as bad as X3 to me. And if it's better than X3, I'm going to watch it. So the movie tries to kind of stay with the canon of the comic book with Dark Phoenix. But you can tell that they wrote it that way, and then they realized that Fox was going to lose the rights, and they just kind of scrap something together and put it out there. So this is going to be the spoiler warning. We are going to talk about what happens in the movie. So if you do not want to know what happens, please tune off now or just fast forward to later in the episode. But
it's at least for the comic book or the geek section, it's going to probably be spoilers all around. So
yeah. So but here's the thing. It's those spoilers. Like you're really not. We're not spoiling anything because we're saving you from having to watch it.
That's right. Yeah.
So this is one of those things at that times. But so the movie kind of starts out where the apocalypse left off, where the X-Men are all together. Things are great. It's kind of the early '90s, and then things start to get a little awkward. So you start to find out that like Professor X is a little bit cocky in this movie. Some people liked it because there was a little bit of a change from the normal Professor X, the humble kind of understanding Professor X. The only determinant before was in Days of Future Past, which was really well done, where he was kind of lost his way. That made sense, But in this one, he's cocky. He feels like that to save mutant and mankind, that he has to keep doing bigger and bigger things. So he sends the X-Men into space, where a solar flare comes. Now, this is canon from the comic book, all right? A solar flare comes to destroy the Spatial Endeavour, which was actually kind of a cool reference because the year that the movie takes place is actually the same year that shuttle was launched. All right, and the X-Men save the astronauts, and then the quote-unquote solar flare comes through and pretty much Jean Grey absorbs it. I'll put it that way. And you find out later in the movie that solar flare is massive power, and that the Shi'ar, who are an alien race, which is, again, canon from the comic book. Yeah, I give them some kind of credit here. Have been tracking this solar flare, or whatever the energy was, and they decide to come down to Earth to kind of get it back from Jean Grey. So for the first time in the X-Men universe, we see kind of the appearance of aliens. It's a very dark type of alien. It's not like the Guardians of the Galaxy fun universe. Let's have fun, kind of attitude. These are dark aliens. They want it back. They don't care what happens to humankind. So you have mutants fighting aliens, fighting humans.
There's no Mary Poppins. There's no Mary Poppins, y'all.
There's nothing even close to that level of funny. There's no humor in this film, and they tried. And then again, I'll make a long story short, but all of a sudden Michael Fassbender's in the movie and it's like, oh, it's Magneto. It's just like, it's just all over the place. You know what I mean? The movie's just all over the place and Jean Grey goes to him for help and he refuses help and they show how powerful she is. It's just like, oh my God, get to the point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then again, there's no point. The big spoiler from the movie, again, this is the only big spoiler if you really don't want to know, is that Jean Grey cannot contain the Phoenix power and she ends up killing Mystique. Okay? So they kill off Mystique. And this is what's funny about it. Now, there's this debate of it wasn't Jean. It was something else. It was something more powerful. And then they just kind of forget that she killed Mystique at the end of the movie. Like, it's okay. We're going to be okay. And so, again, I'll spare you the details. There's lots of things that go on. At the end of the movie, Jean Grey pulls actually Kung Fu Panda 3's ending. She throws the Dark Phoenix power into her name's not Lalandra in the movie, but you can tell that Jennifer Chastain's character, Jessica Chastain, sorry, her character is based off Lalandra, which is like the head of the Shi'ar race.
Yep.
Although they never say that. She puts it into her, and she can't take it because it's too much power, and she dies, and then Phoenix dies, quote unquote. It's just kind of like the ending of X2. And then they name. Now this is cool. This was a little throwback to the comics. They rename the X Mansion the Jean Grey School for the Gifted, or School for the Gifted, I think that's what it's called. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually an alternate timeline in the X-Men universe. And then at the end, Magneto and Professor X are playing chess, and then you see the Phoenix fly in the sky, and then that's the end of the movie. And it's like, what the hell did you just do? There's no closure on this film whatsoever. I guess you're just supposed to kind of think that the end of the credit scene from Days of Future Past, where Wolverine's there in the future and they're all there happy, that just eventuates somehow in the universe. And it just was a really kind of somewhat open-ended ending. It really did not do a good job of developing Phoenix at all, which, to be fair to them, is really, really hard to do. I've always said it's going to be really hard to do Phoenix. Marvel will be able to pull it off if they want to, just because the universe is so big. But, yeah, it was rushed. It was kind of clunky. I didn't even connect with a lot of the characters that I've connected with in the past. In fact, I'm thinking about it now. There was no really one person in that movie I was like, oh, you're awesome. And it just they put it out. It is what it is. It was not the ending that we deserved from the X-Men Fox series, but it's out there. You can see it. It was disappointing overall in terms of no closure. Because they could have really wrapped things up nicely, I think, if they really wanted to. But the only thing I'll applaud is they did try to stick to the canon, which is where X3 miserably failed. X3 is, I think, probably the worst comic book movie ever made, in my opinion, from the modern era. And it was also the first time that we learned in comic book movies that you cannot stray from the canon that far.
Yeah.
So for those of you, if you haven't seen X3, it's just that movie has nothing to do with the X-Men universe. They just made up a story. They killed off major characters for no reason.
It was fan fiction.
Yeah, it was bad. It was really, really bad. I did not enjoy it. And really, since that movie, like, again, Sacrificial Lamb, they've learned never stray too far from the canon of a comic book when you're making a comic book movie, because there are geeks out there who like sports that will be really upset, even like 10 to 15 years later, upset about that movie. But yeah, again, Dark Phoenix, just okay. I mean, like, I thought Apocalypse was way better, and I think that's saying something, because a lot of people don't like Apocalypse. Like, I really enjoyed Apocalypse. I'm one of those few, but I think Days of Future Past was unbelievably good. Logan was obviously the best X-Men movie, but it's kind of outside the X-Men movie universe. But right. It's just, like I said, it's about as monotone as my voice is. It just didn't have anything great. I mean, here's the other thing too. There were some action scenes in there where it's like they reuse, like it's things we've seen before, and I'm like, I just, like, I didn't get it. Like, I didn't really see the Phoenix power at all. I mean, they did that thing like where she poofs people away, like they did in X3, like they just disintegrate, and I'm like, I just saw this in Endgame. I just saw this in Infinity War, and then Yeah, other things too. It just wasn't amazing. I don't regret going to see it again. This was more of an appreciation for the X films, which I've really enjoyed most of them, but just not X3. And yeah, disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, I've heard similar things from a lot of folks. I think the biggest thing is that, and I think one friend kind of hit the nail on the head, is that Dark Phoenix has such a build-up to it.
Yeah.
And the X-Men universe for Fox didn't have as many movies to kind of build up towards something like the Marvel Universe did with Infinity War. Yeah. Like, I mean, I think that everything was building towards this one point, whereas the X-Men movies was, we're going to do the best storylines from X-Men, not do any of the build-up, not do any of the lead-in, and we're just going to try and give you these snippets on screen for once. And I think that's why Apocalypse, I think that, Days of Future Past was great because it kind of could stand on its own. Even in the comics, because it's this kind of this future timeline, it could stand on its own. Whereas with these, like Apocalypse, Dark Phoenix, these are things that need more context and definitely need the relationships built up more, especially between Jean and Scott, that you couldn't do in the limited amount of movies that you had in this universe.
Here's what I'll tell you. I will tell you this. They did, and you're not wrong at all. They did actually build that relationship up a tiny bit. I mean, there was some scenes in the film where it's very clear that her and Scott are together and that they're in love. Like they established that, but it just feels out of nowhere. They were just expecting you to know that. And to be fair, we probably did. Here's the thing about the storyline is that this is funny, right? Jean Grey is essentially the Captain Marvel of the X-Men universe, even though they're in the same comic book universe, okay? Because Jean Grey, when she gets the Phoenix power, I mean, I think it was Uatu says, the Watcher, even says at one point she could have become a god, but she wanted to be a human. Like, that's how powerful Dark Phoenix is, or Phoenix, I should say. She's very powerful, all right?
Yeah.
Again, Captain Marvel, if you need a reference, Captain Marvel level powerful, okay? Which is funny now because Captain Marvel is going to be much more popular and powerful than her now moving forward. The other thing I forgot to mention is that the thing that was awkward about this is it takes place in, I think, 1992. So Professor X and Magneto and Beast should all be in their early 60s if we're following the timeline of the First Class. And, they all look like they're in their late 20s, early 30s. So it's like, and they didn't even try. I mean, they didn't do anything to make them look older, which I get. I get that from just a Hollywood point of view, okay? But it's funny because, they're in their 60s. The first movie takes place in the early 60s, and now they're just still the same age. It's just kind of, it was a little bit weird. For you, Ray, by the way, there's this funny scene where Professor X has pretty much a bat phone to the president. And something goes bad, like Jean Grey kills someone, and they disconnect the X phone. And it's like, man, that was a quick decision. It's just like it's really stupid. Like, again, like just unexplained things. Like all of a sudden, the president who's entrusted the X-Men doesn't trust them anymore, and then they're making like pretty much mutant detention centers. It's like, what? Whoa!
Wow!
What do you mean? You trust these guys and you're putting them in concentration camps? What are you doing? Like, you guys are rushing this. There's also no mention of Trask. There's no mention of Apocalypse. Like, no continuity with the films outside the actual date, which is what Marvel, the MCU, does so well. I don't want to speculate in this episode how they're going to be introduced into the MCU, but I'll put it this way. We had talked in previous episodes about how long do you have to wait. The way I feel now is I don't need them to wait. That's how this feels after this movie. You can bring them in now. I don't give a crap. Bring him in. I'm ready to see him again. Yeah. And I don't need to wait. That's where this movie left me.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too. It was a flop at the box office. Like, at least
flop.
Yeah, like flop, I mean, I think what was it, Secret Life of Pets 2 or something like that beat it on the opening weekend. Like, it was a disaster. I mean, not a disaster. I think they'll still make their money back. But like in terms of comic book movies, this was definitely a like you said, kind of a sad swan song for this franchise. And I also want to point out the funny memes going online about, you mentioned the timeline where it's Fassbender in 1992. And then in the year 2000, it's Ian McKellen. And it's like, what happened to Magneto in 8 years?
I joked on our group page that he had a serious mercury problem in the mid to late 90s, and it just aged him beyond belief. I will say this. If there's any positives, James McAvoy did a pretty good job with the role. Even though I said I was a little confused with where they were taking Professor X, I mean, he did a good job. Fassbender didn't want to be there, and you could tell. He just had no desire to be in this movie. Jennifer Lawrence was good, but they kind of killed her off, like I said. Nicholas Hoult, who plays Beast, was actually he was pretty much his normal self. Sophie Turner should not have been the lead on this movie. And here's the thing: it's not. I don't want to blame her. It's just the character's dry. She's dry, so it's a dry movie. You know what I'm trying to say? Like,
Yep.
You know, she's exactly like she is in Game of Thrones in this movie with an American accent.
Yeah.
Actually,
No.
that hurts Game of Thrones. She's better in Game of Thrones than this. Okay, and then and Ty Sheridan is good as Cyclops, and again, you know, Storm's in there. Oh, Quicksilver. So Quicksilver, who had 2 amazing scenes in Apocalypse and Days of Future Past, right, gets hurt in the first battle like horrendously, and then you don't see him again the rest of the movie. Legit, you don't see him again the rest of the movie. There's like no Quicksilver scene in this, and then Nightcrawler's in it too. But like they. With Nightcrawler, they tried to do the thing they did at the beginning of X2, which I don't know if you remember that opening scene of X2 in the White House. It was
Yes, where he fills it with the smoke and everything, and yeah,
it is actually one of the most heralded comic book scenes. And like they're like, look what he can do, and it's like I've seen this already. I've seen all of this already. Please stop.
yeah.
So and then I just looked up Jessica Chastain's character's name is Vuk. I don't know, but she's based off Lalandre. You can tell. But. Yeah, that's 15 minutes of me talking about disappointed X-Men crap.
Yeah, you really needed to vent, man. You really needed to let that
dude.
go.
Yeah, I mean, look, I want this franchise to work because, like I said, this has always been my I've loved X-Men for a long time. The only powerful note is that it sounds like the Uncanny X-Men or the X-Men for the '90s. For those of you who watch Fox.
Yeah,
the cartoon looks like it might be making a comeback. Or
on Disney Plus. Yes, please.
That would be great because that was one of the best written TV comic book shows ever.
Yeah,
in Marvel history.
Yeah,
you know.
And they took it right from the comics. They took it right from Chris Claremont and Jim Lee.
Yeah.
Like they took it right
Which came
from
out in the early
so.
'90s. Yeah, and here's the other thing too is like for those of you who watch, everyone knows DC. Comic book TV cartoon series always are better than Marvel, just historically. But X-Men was the one that really stood out. Right? There was
X-Men, X-Men, and then the Spider-Man cartoon that
Spider-Man
shortly followed that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I cannot leave out Spider-Man.
Those 2 cartoons for Marvel were on par with what DC does animation-wise.
Yes. There was no, Avengers. Any of the characters really had their own show that anybody watched. You are right, absolutely 100% right on Spider-Man, though. That was another great.
Yeah, I mean there was a Fantastic Four cartoon, there was an Iron Man cartoon, there was a Hulk cartoon.
They all fell hard.
They were I mean they were meh. They had good theme songs.
Iron Man and Captain America and Thor were not large until the current Marvel MCU came around. They just were not. They were huge in comics, but they were never huge on TV. All right, and I know people love those 3 characters, but they were not. Hulk was bigger than they were.
Yeah,
and that's funny.
Robert Downey Jr. single-handedly made Iron Man an A-tier superhero.
Yes, and he was not before.
No,
he just wasn't. Yeah,
he had some great stories. But it was usually as part of an ensemble in Avengers. Like obviously his drinking and everything is a classic. It's a classic storyline though, where like how he has to overcome that and his alcoholism, and it's actually a very big commentary on that and whatnot. But aside from as a character. He wasn't at that level as a Spider-Man, a Wolverine, or somebody like that. So,
you know what's amazing, Ray? You're bringing up a funny point that I'm thinking about here. So, really, up until 2008, which is when Iron Man came out, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
When you look at the mid 90s to 2008, if you look at properties that are large, right? DC is kicking the ass out of Marvel at that time. Yeah. All right. In fact, it wasn't even close. I'm talking about mostly comic books right now. I'm not talking about movies, but comic books. DC was way better than Marvel at that point in terms of storylines, right? Outside X-Men and Spider-Man. So what's funny is today the Avengers are the top property. Okay.
Yeah.
Back then they weren't. The top properties were Superman, Batman, followed by probably Justice League, followed by Spider-Man and the X-Men. Like that's the way it was. And Wolverine had his own. Wolverine was huge in the late 90s.
Yeah, but I mean, you had such a great war going on in the mid 2000s. And again, also me and Lee might be a little biased because that's kind of like the prime of when we were like reading comic books and whatnot. I mean, but you had
Wednesday.
But yeah.
Every Wednesday we would go.
That's right. To Time Warp Comics and Games. Shout out. Yeah, I mean, you had House of M versus you had Batman Hush. You had like you said, Superman Batman with those great Jeff Loeb stories. But I mean, you had all these amazing things going on. You had Civil War with Marvel.
Huge.
You had these. I mean, Civil War in the end did not deliver, but at the beginning that was a huge. The first half of that story was fantastic in comics. And it just, you had this great back and forth.
You had Darkest Night, which was a Green Lantern thing, which was awesome. All right. I mean,
Blackest Night, Brightest Day.
Blackest Night. Yeah. That was an awesome. There was
it brought back Swamp Thing. Blackest Night, awesome. And Brightest Day brought back Swamp Thing.
Well, before you transition, we got to say it. So I'm giving you the transition, but I just want people to know you should read that comic because essentially what happened. I'm actually looking at it right now in my room. Is that there's the Green Lantern ring, there's the yellow ring, there's a black ring, and it raises people from the dead, and it's an amazing storyline because it wasn't campy, right? They made it it was really emotional. They would bring people back. It was oh my god,
yeah.
So and then just with the Wolverine thing too, I was saying I remember when in the mid '90s, I can't remember his name, but somebody broke his claws. I can see him in my head, big blue guy, and it was a huge deal. He broke his claws, and that was a huge comic line. But as you said, the Blackest Night, Darkest Night, Swamp Thing returned. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take your transition.
No, it's all right. Yeah,
go read it.
Which spun out of Infinite Crisis when Batman, quote unquote, died. But yeah, I mean, so Swamp Thing. So speaking of Swamp Thing, first off, folks, let me just preface this by I cannot comment and will not comment on the quote unquote. He just pulled out his copy of Blackest Night and he's showing it to me on camera.
Page 1, chapter 1. I'm just kidding.
I cannot comment on the quote-unquote cancellation of Swamp Thing. This is a critique of the show as it stands right now, as we're recording this. Episode 4 of Swamp Thing just aired. And to everybody who's giving it a 9 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10, I don't understand. Now, this isn't to say it's a bad show. I will say it has great special effects. I will say it has a great atmosphere most of the time. I will say its main characters are terrific. The girl, Crystal Reed, who plays Abby, is terrific. The guy who plays Avery Sunderland is great. Derek Mears in the Swamp Thing suit. He didn't speak much, but when Derek Mears speaks as Swamp Thing, you listen. It has an impact. It's powerful. That being said, there are way too many characters in this show. They tried way too much to make an ensemble cast out of Swamp Thing when Swamp Thing has never been about this massive cast around him. It's been about, horror and supernatural stuff. And yes, you can have characters come in and out, Madame Xanadu, Blue Devil, Constantine. You can have them pop up here or there, but you just look at the people they created for the sake of this show. The little 9-year-old girl who has an affinity for the swamp. Matt Cable's mom. Sunderland's wife, Abby's best friend, and then her girlfriend. All these characters just feel like when they come up screen, it's we're here for an exposition dump. We're here to forcibly drive the plot forward because we're just convenient devices. And I think that if they had just stuck closer to the material, if they didn't feel the need to have this massive central cast, this show would flow so much better and would have such more powerful moments. Jason Woodrue, episode 4 was probably my favorite episode of the series so far. Jason Woodrue, who steals the show every time he's on camera. He's obviously going to become the Floronic Man. Had one scene in the whole episode. It didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And now, again, I'm enjoying the show. I would still probably give it a 7 out of 10. But, the flow, it gets so bogged down with these secondary characters. I really think that it hurt itself by trying to, just get all these big names in there. Obviously, Virginia Madsen and whatnot. Great actors and actresses. But I think, again, talking about what Lee mentioned before, I think when you stray too far from the source material, and in this case, adding characters just for the sake of adding characters didn't make a lot of sense, and I think hurts the show overall. And also, my other major gripe with Swamp Thing, major tonal shifts. for no apparent reason. You go from in episode 3, again, mind you, folks, we're getting into spoil territory here. Episode 3, Swamp Thing basically takes on a zombie. It's basically, it kind of had a Solomon Grundy feel to it, but it wasn't. It very much feels like they're setting up the rot. And if you're familiar with the Scott Snyder run of Swamp Thing, obviously the green versus the rot plus the red, like the idea of all these elementals, you kind of felt like they're starting to get into that. You go from this really terrific horror scene where it's this monster versus monster, and Abby's there terrified, and they're in the swamp, and it's dark and atmospheric, and you go from that, and you cut to Abby meeting with Matt Cable, who's like her high school sweetheart, and they start dancing to Natalie Merchant, and it's like. How do you go from monster versus monster to Natalie Merchant in the bar? We're like, I need a whiskey straight up, please. No, that you should have just ended on the monster. And then after that, you cut to Avery Sunderland. It becomes a slasher flick. Avery Sunderland is taking a golf club to the back of the head of one of his constituents, like one of his henchmen. It
sounds like our Tuesday nights, Ray.
Yeah, it's like it just feels all over the place at times.
That's because it is. It's probably a hot mess. You know, I don't. Here's the thing: Ray cannot comment on the cancellation. Okay, but I can. Okay, and keeping in mind, Ray is so good at his job, he doesn't even talk to me about it, which I respect. To be fair, okay, because he's not allowed to. But DC, what the hell are you doing? Come on, all right. Like it's you know what it seems like to me, right? Again. Ray has to be limited. For those of you who don't know, Ray does work for DC, so he has to be very limited in what he says here. But it just seems to me like the people behind these are kind of like, I know what's best. That is never the approach you should take with a comic book film, all right? Marvel has a very well-documented history. J.J. Abrams with Star Wars has a very well-documented history of talking with fans and listening to fans. What do you want to see? What ideas do you have? What is, and then they study the source material, okay? Which I'm not going to say that DC doesn't do, okay? Because here's the thing, the Teen Titans show, Titans, is really good. It's really, really good. Like, hit the home run there. Then you come to this, and it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
And Doom Patrol was amazing too. Doom Patrol was phenomenal.
That's another one. Right. All right, and it's one of those things. It's like you're doing the same thing you did in the movies. You're throwing too many characters at us at once. You're relying that people know who they are. Like, no offense to Swamp Thing, that's not a leading character to me. Doom Patrol, it's like I was shocked they even went there. All right, and it's like, man, just do one and do it really well, right? And then you can even introduce these people in the universe. And here's, again, I have to kind of preface this: the DC shows on basic television, which are kind of campy but really good, do a really good job of weaving in and out with each other. You know, Arrow and Flash. You know where I'm going with all this stuff.
The CW
obviously in the
shows,
cartoon. Yeah, and Smallville did this with characters too. I mean, they did a really good job with it. It works. Why are you straying away from what works? All right? I don't understand why they can't get this right. All right? And like I said, I'm really intrigued now with DC movies as well, because we're going to a place with these movies now where it's like, okay, we have another Wonder Woman movie coming out. Aquaman is out there. We know Superman and Batman aren't going to be there. And then DC recently said, and I'm going to take a stab at this. Again, Ray, I don't even know if you know about this or you can talk about it, but they're going to pretty much make kind of a split cinematic universe. And I'm guessing what that means is that probably Batman's going to be a standalone character and everyone else is going to be there. Or that the Wonder Woman, the current Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot, and Aquaman
all
are
I can
going to
say
be
is
their own
that is not official. That is not official.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good to know. Okay, because I do believe that DC movies are better when they're standalone.
That is a rumor. That is a rumor that has not been confirmed nor denied by DC.
Okay, well, it's an interesting rumor, and we'll talk about it in the future.
Yeah,
but, we have to talk about something exciting here, or people are going to tune away. Like, don't drink the whiskey yet, people. This episode's going to get good.
Yeah, trust me.
Don't leave us.
Yeah, so, but other thing I wanted to talk about was Frank Miller's Superman Year One came out.
Yes, I'm intrigued about this. Tell me about
for the most part, I really, really actually enjoyed this. Some people have been, the controversy. There's two controversies around this. One is, and I kind of understand this, is that Frank Miller's MO is kind of how he doesn't treat the women characters in a lot of his books very well. And there's been, obviously, in modern times, with Batman and Catwoman in Year One and The Dark Knight Returns, it kind of made sense. but some folks have been a little up in arms, is that there's a scene in Superman Year One where it works, but it also does seem a little tone deaf in today's world. Basically, Superman reveals himself to Lana Lang by saving Lana from being raped. And there's this whole escalation of these bullies who are trying to do things. Lana is kind of like becoming a journalist. She gets pictures of the bullies doing crime. She's going to run it in the school paper, give it to the local newspaper. They go after her, and Clark basically, he's a blur. He takes out all these bullies, and he kind of reveals his abilities to Lana. She's his first real confidant outside of the Kents. Big moment for Superman. Makes sense that you need to have this moment where somebody else besides the Kents learns his powers. Some people are kind of like, do you have to have Lana being possibly like a rape victim kind of thing? Again, I understand it. Might have been a little tone deaf on Miller's part, but he's also Frank Miller. I think he kind of, I don't know. It's an interesting discussion. I don't know where to go with it personally. Again, I can definitely see why it irked a lot of people, especially women. It does feel like it's kind of become a thing for him now in terms of a device.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
I'm intrigued though, Ray. I kind of half get this and half don't. Yeah. In terms of women's empowerment, I get it. In terms of a comic book, I don't really see the big deal. He saved her.
Right.
Like he did the right thing. He saved her.
Yeah.
And this is Frank Miller. It's traditional Superman. I don't know if that again, I didn't read it. It depends how it was written. I don't know if that shows weakness in females. I don't know. I'm intrigued by. I don't want anybody here to listen and think I'm saying that that anything is okay with that situation. I'm just saying that I don't know if it's bad that Superman saved her in that way. Maybe it could have been written differently, but I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, it does. If anything, Miller's always been good about commenting on, even subtly, on the way the world is at that time. Like the way he used television in The Dark Knight Returns, right? I mean, that's a classic thing that he did to get plot points across in a way that made sense, but also commented on how we got information in that time and continued to get information. If anything, the fact that he's been using this device since the mid-'80s kind of shows, if anything, maybe how little we've come as a society in terms of how men treat women in certain ways, right? So if anything, it actually might be a good thing in terms of him saying, look how far we have not come in a lot of ways.
Let me ask you this about the comic. Is this one of those comics that takes place kind of modernly, or does it take place in the past? I'm talking about in terms of like the timeline of a comic book.
I would say it's near past.
Okay, that's what I'm asking, because sometimes they relaunch these things and it's today,
right?
You know what I mean? So this is clearly like near past, meaning that it happened in the past, right? That we are to understand that Superman has an established history in our timeline. Yeah. I don't know. For those of you listening, if you have any comments on that, let us know. I mean, I have no problem with women's empowerment. Ray and I are huge supporters of that. But this is one of those things where it's like I don't know. I'm a man saying this, but I'm not sure that this sacrificed any progress by doing it. Although I understand the argument. That's what I want to say. But Superman saving, I mean, what it is the damsel in distress type.
Which is a classic thing that Superman's done since his first appearance.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go on the record. I don't have a major problem with it. I'm not up in arms about it. I will say there's probably 100 ways they could have had him realize his powers outside of that, but it doesn't bother me. I mean, like here's the thing. It becomes a rabbit hole, right? So let's just say we chastise this comic book. Well, okay, now we have to chastise George McFly for saving, Lorraine Baines, from Biff. And I just want to make a note, joking here, that Superman didn't, he became a blur. George McFly didn't need to do anything but roll his hands into a fist and punch him right in the face and knock him out. Yeah. Okay, a little help from his son from the future. Yeah. So we are now putting George McFly on the same level as Superman. That's very important. But yeah, again, it's a rabbit hole. Got to be careful. There is so much good in comic books right now with female empowerment. There are a lot of strong women to the point that we are arguing about the Avengers Endgame scene with all the women,
right?
Which I don't know why people are arguing about that, but I mean, I don't know against it. I don't know why people are arguing against it, but I'll just go on the record and say I didn't have a problem. I have to read the comic. I don't have a problem with it. It's only a problem if it continues to be that way and they don't introduce female superheroes into that storyline. then it becomes a problem.
I do think that there's a larger statement there about the empowerment of women that I think that people are kind of getting up in arms about a little bit too much. But maybe I'm wrong. Please, especially to our female listeners, please comment.
Yeah, let us know.
Let us know what you think. Have you read the book? What you think? The other thing I want to mention, the other controversy, is at the end of it, Superman joins the Navy. And this has never happened in the comics where Superman joins the military. And Miller's gone on record saying that he's doing this for two reasons. A, it's very typical of somebody who's from like the center of America, the heartland.
Midwest.
He's only really seen Kansas. He wants to get out, see the world, especially if he's going to become this world's protector. The Navy is a great way for somebody, like this is true, from that part of the world to get out, see the world. Miller's also said this is going to allow him to introduce a conflict larger than Superman is used to, and it's going to probably lead to his no-kill rule, and it's also going to give him the reason why he doesn't interfere in larger matters of humankind. He doesn't get involved with politics. He doesn't get involved with presidents and toppling dictators and all this other stuff, unless it gets to the point where it's absolutely positively like necessary, where like hundreds of thousands of people are being killed and whatnot. Like, I mean, like, that's like,
I think. I was going to say, I think it's also important to mention that with Frank Miller, knowing him and Superman, people forget this. People have forgotten this. The original slogan for Superman was that he stands for truth, justice, and the American way. All right? And that's something that's been stripped of him in recent years. In fact, even in Justice League, he just says, I stand for truth and justice. And then he stops. Yeah. And if I know Miller, he's going to bring not that saying back, but he's going to bring an element of that back. And all that means is that Superman stands for our way of life over other ways of life, which is not a bad thing. I'm not going to get political here, but
I mean,
but, Miller, that's a good thing.
And Miller is a big Superman fan. He grew up on those classic Superman stories. People forget, like, yes, he's known for Batman, but Frank Miller, like a lot of us, loves a lot of comic book characters.
Yes.
I mean, so and knowing him and knowing the way he pays tribute to things, I think this is him. With Superman's origin has been explored so much already and is so much more set in stone. This is his way to explore and fill in those little cracks.
I like it.
Whereas when he did Batman Year One, there was so much to explore still because all he still had was his parents were gunned down. He made a vow, and there were a bunch of pearls. Like,
great comic, by the way. Just for anybody who hasn't read it.
Oh, Batman Year One
is phenomenal.
Amazing.
Yeah, definitely check that out.
So, I mean, look, overall, very much enjoyed this comic. Really didn't think of that scene with Lana until, again, a female friend mentioned it, which is why I am curious to see what other people think about it and whatnot.
Yeah,
and again,
me too.
And the military thing, didn't like it at first, but definitely, as I thought on it, definitely like this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So
look, it's it's like Star Wars, right? Like the books about Vader are better because they really dive into his mind and what he's thinking and why he becomes Vader. Or even the comic books of the Clone Wars really dive into why Anakin Skywalker turns to the dark side, which is not explained in the movies. It's very quick. So I think that I like storylines like this that kind of justify maybe sometimes 100 years of lore. But yeah, I think that American Way thing is paving in. I think the military is a great way to do that in a modern comic book. Heavily support our military.
Yes.
I do. Ray and I both do, obviously. So I'm going to pick it up. You've convinced me to pick that up. Not going to watch Swamp Thing and not going to rerun Dark Phoenix. But I'm trying to think of a good transition. Speaking of reruns, no, that's not going to work. I just want to give a quick shout out before we turn to the sports segment, which is primarily going to be about baseball today. But congratulations to the St. Louis Blues once again, Game 7 winners of the Stanley Cup Final. Worst to first scenario, proving everybody wrong. I was in Las Vegas last week at the NHL awards ceremony and got to meet a lot of players. I met Ryan O'Reilly, really great guy. Congratulations to them. If you want more on the hockey stuff, you can check out my other channel, WeLive.Hockey, because I'm not going to make that infiltrate the show too much.
It's a great page if you love hockey. It is a great page.
No, thank you, Ray. I do appreciate that. Also, congratulations to the Toronto Raptors on winning the NBA championship, dethroning the Golden State Warriors in really a dramatic fashion. Really huge for Canada and Toronto. It was actually fun to watch at the end. It was refreshing. Nobody gave them a chance, including us. Well, at least me. I don't know.
No, me too.
Nobody gave them a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and good on them for winning. But we move past hockey and baseball into I call it the endless summer, unfortunately, because I'm a winter guy. But summer is coming, and it is baseball season, and we're not going to talk about the season right now. But Ray, intriguing news out of Tampa that I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, it came out yesterday that Tampa Bay has asked Major League Baseball to explore the option of splitting their home games in the future between Tampa Bay, or really St. Petersburg, but Tampa Bay and Montreal, where the Expos used to play. Now, this has been going on. Baseball's been looking into expansion, thinking about expanding. There have been rumors of possibly bringing a franchise back to Montreal. Of course, a lot of times one of the big things that makes it, reason why teams leave is because cities won't support their facilities. So the old Olympic Stadium that the Expos played in was a dump. By the time it had they left, and the same thing with the Trop down in Tampa. Tampa doesn't want to build a new stadium, even though it desperately needs to. And so Tampa Bay is kind of like, it could lead to 2 new stadiums. Yeah. It could lead to a team in Montreal. It could also lead to Tampa Bay moving to Montreal, and also, there's also been talks of even a team in San Juan, Puerto Rico at some point, which I think would be amazing. But I think this is, personally, I think this is a terrible move. I think this is going to not only ostracize your fan base in Tampa, but I think it's not going to win fans over in Montreal. I think if you want to bring baseball back to Montreal, again, obviously very much a hockey city, and establish a second sport there, this is not the way to do it, to have where it feels like you have a rental team. I get the idea that, yes, it could be a way of Tampa Bay trying to get leverage to get a new stadium in Tampa, or to get Montreal to pony up the cash for a new stadium. I think this is a step too far. I think this is bad for both fan bases. It's bad for the team. It's bad for baseball, because you're going to change scheduling and flight plans. I already hate the idea of the Yankees going to England to play Boston because it's going to screw up their travel schedule so much and waste their off days. Because baseball, more than any other sport, baseball is a marathon. It's 162 games. They play 26 out of 30 days in a month, if not more. It is the idea of all this travel and a team like Tampa, where they're basically going to play really 120 games on the road. I think it's a bad thing for baseball. I think it's a bad thing for Tampa. I think it's a bad idea.
Well, here's what I'll say as a former sports executive, from a business point only. So I am not speaking about fandom right now. From a business point only, I kind of get it, all right? And it's because it's all about risk taking. And from a business point of view, it's that this is what they're thinking. Business point of view, okay. We're telling our fan base, if you don't want to support the Rays, we're gonna move. So you better start showing up to our games if you want the Rays to stay here. To Montreal, they're saying, if you want a professional baseball team here, start showing up to some games and let us know. This is your opportunity to let us know you want baseball back in Montreal to have another Canadian team. That's the first thing. Second thing is that, again, you want the stadiums. You mentioned this, okay? You're telling the city, you better support us or we're leaving, all right? As you said as well, it lets the MLB know engage interest about baseball in Montreal. Now, Tampa Bay, 10 years ago was a powerhouse, and now they're not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, and Florida teams have always, except for probably the Dolphins, Florida teams have always had a hard time drawing fans, except for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Actually, I should say the Tampa Bay Lightning have always really done well.
And I will say, at least this year, Tampa Bay has been good. This year, the Rays have been good. They are in the wild card right now.
Yeah, I'm just saying that they're long from the 2008 time period where they were.
Well, they were year in, year out a good competitor.
Yeah. And again, we're obviously talking about the Central Florida down, like obviously Jacksonville, Jag fans. We're not ripping on you. You guys are great as well, but. Yeah, like from a business point of view, I get it. From a fan point of view, this is painful. Like, I don't like seeing that. If you want to build a franchise, you got to look at what they've done. Like I was just in Vegas. The way they built that hockey team there was phenomenal. They held a lot of NHL exhibition games there. The fans came out. They sold out season tickets. Like they got it. They did it right. They said that we want a hockey team there. Now with the Raiders moving there, it's funny because I was there and I saw Raider pop-up stores everywhere. Right, so they're doing a good job welcoming the team. Again, football's a different monster.
Yeah.
And now there's talk of Vegas having a baseball team too and a soccer team. So like Vegas is quickly becoming a sports city, which it makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. The Golden Knights really paved the way for that. Met a lot of Golden Knights fans last week, and it's kind of cool to see. Anyway, but baseball, like, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Business-wise, there's a lot of positives that can come, but there's also a lot of negative on the blowback from the fan base. But, if you're a Rays fan, you better start showing up. Like again, Ray, you think they'll be jaded, but the truth is this. If you don't show up, you're not going to have a baseball team.
Yeah.
And it is a business, and the team is telling the fans that, like, you got to support this team or we're leaving. Yeah. All right. So, same thing. And, Marlins fans are the same thing. I mean, they're jaded beyond belief. All right. And I don't think they're going to come. I mean, look, the truth is this. You put a winner in town, unless you're the Miami, Florida Marlins, you're going to have people show up.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, it's true. There's very few franchises that can survive a long streak of losing. Not even the Yankees, when they were losing in the late 80s, early 90s, they saw attendance down to all-time lows. Like, it's like you have to win. You have to at least be competitive if you want people
Detroit
to show
Red Wings are another one. Yeah, like this in the late 80s, horrendous. People didn't want to be there. But, again, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that situation.
So just real quick on the idea of Vegas getting a baseball team. Baseball, part of the reason why it's been so long to get sports in Vegas is because of baseball. Because their cardinal rule is no gambling. The Black Sox scandal of 1919 after Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis came down, banned the whole team. And then, of course, Pete Rose, right? That whole thing. Like, so that's why baseball's been very anti-gambling for its entire history, basically. So the idea that they could go to the gambling capital of the world is mind-boggling. And I will say this. I very much, and we're not going to get this as a whole other topic for another show, but Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, 100%.
He should be back in baseball. And the fact that he's treated as terribly as he is a travesty and a disgrace to the game. And Shoeless Joe Jackson belongs in the Hall, too. So that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
But, like...
he says it's another show. What they're doing is they're going to wait for them to die before they do it. And that's an atrocity.
Yeah. And that's
atrocity.
Yeah, and
everyone agrees by it. I don't know anyone who doesn't think that, by the way. Now,
yeah,
just that's a good point. I mean, I don't know anyone who doesn't think that he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
at this point.
Yeah,
and I actually thought that would have been what's his name, the previous commissioner's last act.
Seeley,
and he didn't do it.
Seeley, yeah,
I thought he was going to do that for sure
because he's a coward.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, very interesting that Vegas might get a baseball team. But anyway, into the mashup. So we were talking about...
This is not going to be disappointing, by the way. Everything about the episode was disappointing except for this.
Yes, everything's been about disappointment, but this will redeem us, this episode. So we're talking about, obviously, splitting time between cities. So the idea of the mashup is, for a baseball team, is that could a superhero split time between brands? And Lee, I was just thinking Marvel and DC, but then I started
to go beyond that.
But then I started going beyond that, and I thought, because we've had so many crossovers and we've had so many times where he's met with other heroes, what about Spawn, who's about to celebrate his 300th issue in the Marvel universe? Right?
That's an interesting one. I mean, he spends time in the MK universe, so the Mortal Kombat universe, which is,
I think
it does work.
I think Spawn is a gritty enough, like even if he's in the mature Max books, like with the Punisher or something. I think Spawn or Deadpool, like Spawn, could have a place in the more mature viewership of the Marvel universe because of how obviously violent and gritty and dark he is, and of course he's also created by Todd McFarlane, who created Venom. So I think even that would be an interesting matchup if Spawn met Venom and spent some more time in that part of the Marvel universe.
That's an interesting idea of Spawn and Venom even teaming up in a good way. Mm-hmm. I could see that being really awesome, actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so here's the other one. So we got to get the obvious one out of the way, which is Batman, who makes almost more sense in Marvel, just in terms of him being human. People hate when that comes around, but like Batman's always been a little out of place in that universe. So Batman could be in Marvel. That's actually happened before. But what I'm saying is only Batman. I would like to see the Batman universe in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, the Bat family and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be kind of interesting to see. Because I always say the funny part about crossing over DC to Marvel is, all of the heroes, all of the DC heroes are mutants in the Marvel universe. You know what I mean? I always thought that was kind of funny. But here's one for you. All right. So I'm laughing because I'm thinking about the conversation between Deadpool and Ash Williams from Evil Dead. Yeah. Can you imagine Ash and Deadpool in a movie together? That would be unbelievable. All right. So again, for those of you who haven't seen Evil Dead, somehow go see it. All right. All right. The other thing too is this is a chain wielding maniac who pretty much was the inspiration for Duke Nukem, right? I would say at this point, right? I can see one of them Ash, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, Ash and Deadpool together. I mean, there's also the idea of a crossover. The problem is that it doesn't work out timeline-wise, but Star Wars and anybody, but like, I don't know if that would ever really work just because, Star Wars takes place a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, which people tend to forget for some reason from time to time. Yeah. But, I like the idea of Spawn in Venom. That would be dark as hell and fun to watch. Yeah. And like Spawn works. He just kind of works in that, in that universe. So, yeah, I could see that. I'm trying to think if there's anybody like there's plenty of characters that are similar, like Hulk and Thing. Right. Like I'd like to see some team ups with like the people people that are kind of the same. We talked about it before. What about Phoenix and Captain Marvel? Like, and that's not okay. That's not technically a crossover, but it kind of is in terms of the film.
In terms of cinematics, but like,
I don't think they've ever appeared together.
But like you mentioned, Hulk. Could Hulk take on like Solomon Grundy? Could Hulk? Could Hulk? Awesome. Could Hulk go to DC and take on Grundy? Grundy's basically kind of like Gray Hulk in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously, Grundy came much longer before the Hulks, so don't get me on that, folks. But I'm saying like in terms of like their personalities, Grundy and Gray Hulk are very, very kind of similar depending on how they're written.
So Ray, here's a like comic trivia question for you, kind of because you'll actually know this. But if I'm not mistaken, most of the monster universe is owned by Marvel, correct?
Like like Dracula and stuff.
Dracula, Mummy, I don't ever remember seeing like a Frankenstein comic. I mean, I know there's Morbius and stuff, but like if I'm not mistaken, there's a lot of classic monsters that are in the Marvel universe. I might be wrong.
The thing is actually because the classic monsters is kind of a gray area of like public domain. You actually have them. They've had crossed over before. Like you've had Batman versus Dracula. You've had Dracula. See, that's where I was going with that. You've had Dracula in also the Marvel universe though. I remember I actually had a Dracula trading card with the Marvel trading cards. Like when I was super like you used to have those in the early '90s. Marvel had a Dracula card. Yeah, I love those too.
Marvel masterpieces. Yeah. Oh man, I miss those. Real quick story. I had a lot of those, and someone stole them, and I was devastated. I'm devastated right now thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, you have Dracula like versus Blade, right? But there's also Frankenstein, Agent of Shade, is in the DC universe.
That's right.
So. I mean,
just real quick, go back to Dracula versus Blade. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean that's an awesome idea. Like, and you said it happened. Like it already exists. But Dracula versus Blade, that's brilliant. Yeah, especially if they do Dracula right.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I mean, actually, that would be a great movie.
Yeah, but I wish The Walking Dead would cross over so that all of those characters could be killed and we could just be done with it. Yeah, because I'm tired of it.
Yes. Yeah,
you've lost me. Yeah, there's some other funny ones too. Like I wish Darth Vader could appear in XYZ so he could kill everybody.
Oh man, what?
Oh! I got one. Sorry. Okay. See, this is one of those fun. This is why Deadpool's always disqualified because he becomes the answer for everything. Like he's the most underrated comic book character of all time. Mm-hmm. What if I took Deadpool and dropped him into Spaceballs? Yeah. How funny would that movie be? You idiots! You've caught the stunt doubles.
Oh my god, he would fit right in because they break the fourth wall so much. Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, man. Oh man. Anyway,
a more basic one. Spider-Man in the Justice League. I think Spider-Man would do well with. I think even just the Flash and Superman. I think Spider-Man would fit in right in with those guys.
How about ready for this one? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Batman.
Lee, they already did that one.
Yeah, I know we talked about
Yeah, I
it.
know.
for a
Yeah,
whole-
yeah.
It's one of our more popular episodes, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one, though. Man, we could keep going on this for a while. It's just so you at home know how we do the mashup. Ray and I, we kind of think about them, but we try not to go too deep into the mashup when we're prepping the episode because we want it to be kind of organic.
Yeah.
And that's why it seems like a lot of the ideas show up when we're here. Make sure that you do email us or comment about your favorite, what you would want to see crossed over. But yeah, there's a lot of them. I mean, I'm thinking back to old cartoons now. Like, I'm thinking like I'd like to see Darkwing Duck with Batman.
That would be great.
Like that would be funny, or Scrooge McDuck with Tony. Oh man, I'm thinking about it. I watch Mickey Mouse too much with my kids. Sorry.
No, it's all good. You know, shout out to Mickey and the Roadster Racers, I guess. Or whatever.
Amen. Yeah. I do that. We do a lot of Clubhouse in this house. I'll put it that way.
There you go.
And Sesame Street. I'm looking at my bobblehead of Boba Fett. I'm thinking he would be good in the Batman universe.
Yes, as a bounty hunter.
Oh, Batman chases Boba Fett? That would be fun.
Man, like kind of like KG Beast, like he's just another bounty hunter or whatever going after Batman. Or
Yeah.
I mean, there have been so many stories where like Batman's had like a bounty on his head and people have been hunting him.
Yeah.
Boba Fett after Batman, that would work really well, actually.
Here's some more I'd like to see. This might have happened. I'd like to see Predator versus Hulk.
Oh.
You know, I wouldn't mind seeing that. Or you know, they've done some pretty cool Predator Batman stuff in fan
Yeah,
films.
Alien,
That's really fun to
Alien
watch.
Batman, Predator Batman. Yeah, we've seen that.
Okay, one of my favorites. What if Booster Gold met up with C-3PO and R2-D2 and BB-8 while we're on it?
Oh, and Skeets.
Skeets would be so happy.
Yeah. and Booster would be in hell. It'd be a nightmare for Booster.
Ooh, who could we team up Indiana Jones with? I'm thinking about it too.
Indiana Jones, that's a good one.
Yeah, like him and Batman are way too dry together, but I could see Indiana Jones playing a role with some. Oh, you know what? Here's a weird one. Him and Bruce Banner would make an interesting comic, especially if he turns into Hulk. So imagine Indiana running away from Hulk and not the big boulder.
Yeah. You know, Indiana Jones's comics in the mid '80s were published by Marvel. So
I guess it's not technically a con. I mean, they're making another Indiana Jones. That's another episode. I don't know what they're thinking on that one. But yeah, dude, there's plenty here. I have a Marty McFly thing that doesn't work anywhere. But yeah, dude, there's a ton.
Yeah. No, I think we've. This was good. This was a good. We've kind of exhausted this. We're at an hour again. So, because
who do you think? Back to full radio list. Who do you think fits into this list? Let a comment below. Let us know at geekswholiksports@gmail.com.
No, seriously. Definitely let us know your comments. Comment on the whole show. We touched on a lot of things, some more controversial than others. We want to know what you guys think about a lot of this stuff, that's happening.
Yeah, what are you disappointed about?
Yeah.
What disappointed you this year in comic book world?
Yeah.
And sports world. Don't say your team losing. That's 99% of teams you're disappointed.
Yeah. This was a bit of a different episode for us. We're usually pretty upbeat, happy, positive guys, but it was a rough week.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, look, we got to talk about the bad and the good. We can't just be upbeat all the time. There's just some very borderline okay stuff coming out lately. We'll have a lot more stuff to talk about next week. There's always new topics. We actually held off on this topic for a week because we want to talk about E3.
Yeah. No, exactly. So, but yeah, no, we appreciate everybody, of course, who listens. It means the world to us. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Geeks Who Like Sports. Give us those 5-star ratings. There's those sweet 5-star ratings. And, of course, on SoundCloud.com/Geeks Who Like Sports. Email us, geekswholikesports@gmail.com. Of course, if you're listening and you're part of our Facebook group, if you're new to the group, we love you guys. We appreciate it so much. We really appreciate how much this group has grown already over the 3 months that we've been doing the show. And yeah, so that's it for episode 13 of Geeks Who Like Sports. For Lee, I'm Ray. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will see you again next week. Until then, have a good one.
Be positive.